Let's be brutally honest for a moment. When the uninitiated think of a rock and roll drummer, the image that flashes to mind is one of barely controlled chaos. It's a maelstrom of flailing limbs, a sweaty, primal beast perched atop a throne, beating skins and cymbals into submission, as if trying to punch a hole through the very fabric of reality. We picture Keith Moon of The Who, a human firework display, a glorious, grinning agent of destruction, whose fills were less a part of the song and more a series of controlled explosions, threatening to derail the entire enterprise at any second. We see John Bonham of Led Zeppelin, the thunder god himself, a man who hit with such concussive force that he didn't just keep time, he bent it to his will, his right foot a weapon of mass destruction. We conjure Neil Peart of Rush, the cerebral professor behind a fortress of drums, executing polyrhythmic equations with the precision of a supercomputer, a dazzling display of technical prowess that left other drummers weeping into their practice pads. These men were titans, demigods of the backbeat. They were loud, they were flashy, and they were, in no uncertain terms, the roaring engines of their respective bands. They demanded and received our undivided attention. And then there was Nick Mason, the quiet one, the constant, the only member of Pink Floyd to have played on every single album, from the whimsical acid pop of their 1967 debut to their final ambient farewell in 2014. If you were to watch footage of the band in their heyday, say, the legendary Live at Pompeii concert, you wouldn't see the same kind of wild abandon. You'd see a man of intense focus, a picture of calm concentration amidst the swirling psychedelic maelstrom his band was creating. There were no stick twirls, no 20-minute solos designed to showcase his chops. His movements were economical, graceful even. He often seemed more like a surgeon than a rock star, making precise incisions into the sonic landscape. By the metrics of the rock drummer arms race, he wasn't even competing. He was playing a different game entirely, on a different field, with a different set of rules that he himself was writing. And that is precisely why, decades later, the work of those other thunder gods can sometimes feel locked in its era, while Mason's contributions feel timeless, elemental, and more influential than ever. Judging Nick Mason on his speed, or his flash, is like judging a master architect on how many nails he can hammer in a minute. It's a fool's errand. Mason wasn't there to demolish the building. He was there to design the cathedral, to lay the foundation, and to ensure the acoustics were so perfect that a single note could echo into infinity. To truly grasp the seismic shift Mason represented, you have to plunge yourself into the primordial soup of mid-60s London. The city was the undisputed epicenter of the cultural universe, a vibrant explosion of fashion, art, and, most importantly, music. The British invasion had conquered the world, but back home things were getting weirder. The polite suit-and-tie R&B of the early Beatles and Stones was being supplanted by something louder, heavier, and far more adventurous. The power trio was king. Cream, with Ginger Baker on drums, was fusing blues with a kind of proto-metal and free jazz improvisation. Baker, a notoriously cantankerous genius, played with a ferocious polyrhythmic complexity, his two bass drums a constant rolling thunder. The Jimi Hendrix Experience had crash-landed from another planet, with Mitch Mitchell on the kit, a disciple of Elvin Jones who showered Hendrix's alien guitar transmissions with a constant barrage of jazzy, explosive fills. And then there was The Who, whose sound was pure adolescent aggression, propelled by Moon the Loon, who treated the drums not as a lead instrument, but as a chaotic torrent of snare rolls and cymbal crashes that was pure, unadulterated EAD. This was the landscape, loud, blues-based, and driven by drummers who were virtuosos of power. Into this testosterone-fueled arena walked 4 students from the Regent Street Polytechnic in London. Crucially, they weren't blues purists or rock and roll lifers. They were students of art. And in the case of Mason and Roger Waters, architecture. This background is not a trivial piece of trivia. It is the absolute key to understanding everything that followed. Their leader was a brilliant, beautiful, and deeply eccentric painter and songwriter named Syd Barrett. The music they were making in clubs like UFO and the Roundhouse was unlike anything else. It wasn't about boy meets girl or dancing in the street. It was about gnomes and bicycles and scarecrows, and the vast, terrifying, and wondrous expanses of inner space. It was the soundtrack to the burgeoning psychedelic movement, music for expanding your consciousness. and it demanded a completely new approach to rhythm. What do you play on a song like Astronomy Domin, with its crackling interstellar intro and its descending chromatic main riff? A standard rock beat would have sounded laughably pedestrian. What Mason did instead was revolutionary in its subtlety. He used his ride cymbal to create a sense of forward momentum, a hypnotic, pulsing wash of sound, while his snare and toms provided accents, like distant cosmic events. He was painting with sound, using the textures of his kit to enhance the song's otherworldly atmosphere. Listen to the sprawling 9-minute instrumental Interstellar Overdrive. It's the sound of a band untethering itself from convention and drifting out into the void. Mason's drumming is the anchor, but it's a floating anchor. He establishes a frantic, driving beat at the beginning, but as the piece descends into its free-form middle section, he deconstructs the rhythm. He uses soft mallet rolls on his toms, creating a sound like distant thunder. He scrapes his cymbals, making them hiss and shimmer like solar winds. He's not keeping time in the traditional sense. He's manipulating time. He's stretching it, compressing it, and creating pockets of silence that are as important as the notes themselves. This was his architectural training made manifest. He understood structure, tension, and release, not as abstract musical concepts, but as tangible physical principles. He knew that to appreciate the scale of a vast empty space, you first had to define its boundaries. His drumming provided the framework, the blueprint for the band's sonic explorations. He was the ghost in the machine, the invisible hand guiding the psychedelic journey. The tragic departure of Syd Barrett and the arrival of the more lyrical, blues-inflected guitarist David Gilmour could have spelled the end for the band. Instead, it forced them to evolve, and Mason's role became even more critical. The band's music became less about whimsical, chaotic bursts of psychedelia and more about long, slow-burning atmospheric pieces. They were building soundscapes, and Mason was the chief landscape architect. This is the period where his genius for restraint, for playing the song rather than the instrument, truly blossomed. The 1971 album Medal is a perfect case study, culminating in the 23-minute epic Echoes, which would occupy the entire second side of the vinyl LP. The track begins with Richard Wright's single sonar-like piano note. For nearly a minute and a half, the band builds a sparse, aquatic atmosphere. When Mason finally enters, it's not with a crash, but with a whisper. A simple, almost metronomic beat, hi-hat and snare locked in a hypnotic embrace with Waters' bass. It's a masterclass in patience. He understands that the power of this piece lies in its gradual, almost imperceptible build. For the next several minutes, he holds that groove, a steady, reassuring pulse beneath Gilmour's soaring guitar lines and Wright's shimmering organ. A lesser drummer, a drummer with a bigger ego, would have been chomping at the bit to throw in some flashy fills to make their presence known. Mason knew better. He knew his job was to create the sense of a vast, underwater expanse, and he did it with breathtaking discipline. Then comes the middle section, the infamous funky part. The rhythm shifts, becomes more syncopated, more aggressive, but it's still controlled, still serving the overall dynamic arc of the piece. And then, as the song builds towards its final majestic climax, Mason finally unleashes his power. The fills become more frequent, more powerful. The cymbal crashes are no longer gentle splashes, but great, roaring waves of sound. It's a moment of immense catharsis, made all the more powerful by the incredible restraint that preceded it. He has spent 20 minutes building the tension brick by brick, and now he is allowing it to be released. It's a performance that is as emotionally intelligent as it is rhythmically precise. He's not just a timekeeper, he's a storyteller, a dramatist. Of course, no discussion of Nick Mason's genius would be complete without talking about the dark side of the moon. Here, Mason's conceptual and sonic contributions were as vital as anyone's. Let's start with the very first sounds. The album opens with Speak to Me, a collage of heartbeats, cash registers, and vocal snippets that serves as an overture for the entire work. Its sole composition credit? Nicholas Berkeley Mason. He wasn't just the drummer. He was the conceptual gatekeeper, setting the stage for the journey to come. The album is a seamless, flowing piece of music, and Mason's drumming is the river that runs through it. Consider the opening track of Side 2, Money. It's famous for its odd time signature, 7/4. Now let's correct a common misconception. While Mason was instrumental in the process, the iconic introductory tape loop of cash registers and coins was a painstaking, physically demanding creation largely driven by the obsessive vision of Roger Waters. It involved meters of magnetic tape, razor blades, and splicing blocks. Waters and engineer Alan Parsons spent hours in the studio physically constructing that rhythmic bed. Mason's role was as a collaborator and performer, and his genius was in what he did next. He made that awkward, lopsided 7/4 rhythm groove. Odd time signatures in rock often sound academic and forced. Mason somehow makes it swing with a greasy, bluesy swagger. He found the human feel inside the mathematical equation. It's a testament to his incredible innate sense of rhythm that one of the biggest hit singles of the 1970s was a song that most people couldn't even tap their foot to properly. But it's on the album's more atmospheric tracks that his true artistry shines. On Breathe, his touch is as light as a feather. He uses brushes on the snare, and his cymbal work is a soft, shimmering wash of sound. He's not playing a beat. He's emulating the very act of respiration. It's the sound of calm, of floating. Then there's Us and Them, a song about the duality of human conflict. It's a slow, mournful, jazz-inflected piece. For long stretches, Mason doesn't play at all, allowing the space to be filled by Wright's Hammond organ and Dick Parry's melancholic saxophone. When he does enter, it's with a simple, powerful backbeat in the choruses, a moment of release that feels earned and monumental. He's using dynamics in the most profound way possible, contrasting silence with sound, calm with power. He's playing the emotional content of the lyrics. And then there is Time. Has there ever been a more perfect or more audacious drum intro in the history of rock? The song begins with the cacophony of alarm clocks that Mason and Parsons painstakingly recorded and assembled. Out of this jarring chaos emerges not a beat, but a melody played on a set of Remo rototoms. These were a relatively new piece of percussion at the time, drums that could be tuned to specific pitches by rotating them. Mason's intro is a tense, dramatic, and instantly iconic piece of music in its own right. It's the sound of a clock ticking, yes, but it's also a warning, a call to arms against the complacency of a life unlived. When the band finally crashes in, Mason lays down one of the most powerful and deliberate grooves ever committed to tape. It's a slow, heavy, almost plodding beat. It's the sound of the inexorable march of time, a funereal procession. Every single snare hit lands with the weight of a lifetime of regret. It's not flashy, it's not complex, but it is perfect. Part of Mason's genius was also his sound. In an era when drummers were taping pillows and wallets to their drums to get a dead, thudding, funky sound, Mason went in the opposite direction. He wanted his drums to sing. Working at Abbey Road Studios, he and the engineers pioneered a sound that was big, open, and resonant. He tuned both the top and bottom heads of his Ludwig drums, allowing them to ring out with a pure musical tone. He often removed the front head of his bass drum and mic'd it from a distance to capture the deep, booming ambience of the room. The result was a drum sound that was massive, but not in a heavy-handed way. It was a sound that had space inside it. The iconic tom-tom fills in Time, or Shine on You Crazy Diamond sound, so huge precisely because of this approach. Each drum is a distinct note, a resonant voice in the overall conversation. His choice of cymbals was also crucial. In the classic era, he favored Paste Giant Beat and later Paste 2002 cymbals, which had a shimmering, glassy, and complex quality, perfect for creating the atmospheric washes of sound that became a Floyd trademark. He wasn't just hitting things, he was sculpting frequencies, crafting a sonic signature that was as recognizable as Gilmour's guitar tone. This deep understanding of sound and structure made him the perfect foil for the other musicians. The rhythmic partnership between Mason and Waters is one of the all-time greats, as telepathic and intuitive as any in rock. Waters was a highly melodic and often busy bass player. A less disciplined drummer would have competed with him, resulting in a cluttered, muddy low end. Mason knew exactly when to lock into a simple, solid groove to provide the foundation for Waters' explorations. Similarly, he provided the perfect canvas for Gilmour and Wright. He understood that a soaring lyrical guitar solo needs space to breathe. On Comfortably Numb, during Gilmour's two legendary solos, Mason's drumming is a model of powerful simplicity. He lays down a solid, unwavering backbeat that acts as an emotional anchor, allowing Gilmour's guitar to cry, to scream, and to ascend to the heavens. He never gets in the way. He never overplays. He senses the emotional arc of the solo and supports it. Now we must address the most contentious period, the war. By the late 70s, Pink Floyd was imploding under the weight of its own success and Roger Waters' increasingly autocratic control. The recording sessions were notoriously fraught with tension, and it's here that we must be unflinchingly honest. On the hauntingly beautiful track Mother, with its shifting time signatures and delicate feel, the drummer is not Nick Mason. Waters and producer Bob Ezrin, frustrated with Mason's inability to nail the part to their satisfaction, brought in a session legend, Jeff Porcaro, the inhumanly precise drummer for Toto. This isn't a knock on Mason, it's a testament to the toxic environment of the sessions and the specific, almost impossible feel that Waters and Ezrin were chasing. However, to suggest Mason's role on the album was diminished is absurd. His powerful driving beat on Run Like Hell, his explosive work on In the Flesh, and his solid iconic groove on Another Brick in the Wall Part 2 are absolutely fundamental to the album's sound and success. He was still the band's rhythmic heart, even as the band itself was having a coronary. This brings us to a crucial point, one that separates fawning hagiography from real analysis. Was Mason's minimalist architectural style always a deliberate intellectual choice, as fans and critics often portray it? The man himself would be the first to tell you, no. In his brilliant, witty autobiography, Inside Out, Mason is relentlessly self-deprecating. He frequently admits that in the early days, his style was as much a product of his technical limitations as it was of any grand artistic vision. He wasn't a trained jazz virtuoso like Ginger Baker or a natural powerhouse like John Bonham. He played simply because often that was what he could play. But here lies the strange alchemy of genius. His limitations became his greatest strength. A technically busier drummer would have suffocated the embryonic Pink Floyd. A more conventional rock drummer would have trampled all over the delicate atmospheres they were trying to create. Mason's intuitive, tasteful, and yes, sometimes limited approach was the perfect approach for this specific band. His genius wasn't necessarily in a conscious, premeditated decision to be minimalist. It was in the incredible, instinctive musicality that allowed his personal style to mesh so perfectly with the band's sonic ambitions, creating a whole far greater than the sum of its parts. It was a happy accident of cosmic proportions. The legacy of Nick Mason is not one of speed, power, or technical wizardry. It is a legacy of taste, intelligence, and profound musicality. He was the ultimate song servant. He taught a generation of drummers that what you don't play is often more important than what you do. He proved that the drums could be an instrument of texture, color, and atmosphere, not just rhythm. You can hear his DNA everywhere, from the spacious, minimalist drumming of post-rock bands like Mogwai and Godspeed You, Black Emperor, to the tasteful, song-serving approach of drummers in bands like Radiohead and Tame Impala. He redefined the role of the drummer from a mere timekeeper to a true sonic architect. So the next time you find yourself lost in the majestic, sprawling universe of a Pink Floyd album, try an experiment. Ignore the guitar solos. Ignore the lyrics. Ignore the keyboard textures. Just for a few minutes, focus solely on the drums. Listen to the steady, hypnotic pulse of the ride cymbal. Listen to the deep, melodic voice of the tom-toms. Listen to the spaces he leaves, the moments of silence that allow the music to breathe and expand. You will hear the sound of a master at work. You will hear the heartbeat of one of the most ambitious and important bands in history. You will hear the quiet genius of Nick Mason, the man who didn't need to be the loudest in the room to be the most powerful. He was the ghost in the machine, the invisible force that held the entire spectacular, cosmic, and deeply human world of Pink Floyd together. And his work isn't just a collection of beats. It's a blueprint for building worlds with sound,